All right, let's dive into one of the most powerful and, honestly, moving stories from the ancient world, the prayer of Hannah. It's a tale of deep personal pain, incredible faith, and a miracle that, well, many of us probably know by heart.
On the surface, it's a beautifully simple story, right? You have Hannah, a woman who's heartbroken because she can't have children. She goes to the sanctuary at Shiloh and just pours her soul out. Her prayer gets answered, and she gives birth to Samuel, who, grows up to be one of Israel's most important prophets. It's this perfect picture of unwavering personal faith.
But what if there's more to it? What if this deeply personal story, this mother's desperate plea, was actually shaped and crafted to push a huge national political agenda? That's the question modern scholars are asking, and let me tell you, the answer uncovers a hidden story that is every bit as fascinating as the miracle itself. To really get this, we have to put on our literary detective hats. We're not just going to read the story, we're going to investigate how it was built. And the biggest clue is figuring out who wrote it, when they wrote it, and, this is the most important part, why.
See, the book of Samuel, where we find Hannah's story, isn't just some standalone book. It's actually part of this massive historical project that scholars have a fancy name for, the Deuteronomistic history. The easiest way to think of it is like Israel's national epic. It was put together centuries after the events happened, and it had a very clear agenda: to explain the nation's entire history and, crucially, to justify why they needed kings in the first place.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The story of Hannah is set way back around 1100 BCE, back when Israel was just a loose collection of tribes. But the book itself, it wasn't actually written and edited until around 600 BCE, during the height of the monarchy and exile. That is a 500-year gap. Think about that. The writers weren't just jotting down old memories. They were looking back with perfect 20/20 hindsight, and they were shaping the past to make a point about their present.
And lucky for us, they left behind some pretty big clues. One of the most glaring ones is in Hannah's song of praise right after Samuel is born. She's singing about how God will give strength to His king and honor His anointed.
And here's the puzzle. When Hannah is supposedly singing this, there is no king in Israel. There won't be for generations. This is a huge anachronism, a detail that's totally out of place for the time. For scholars, this is like a smoking gun. It shows that the editors almost certainly inserted this line to foreshadow the coming monarchy and make it seem legitimate, like it was God's plan from the very beginning. They turned a personal prayer into a national prophecy. But the editors weren't just making things up out of thin air. They were weaving together much older traditions and stories. And if you read carefully, you can actually hear the tension between these different sources still vibrating in the text. Which brings us to this fascinating little conflict buried right inside the story.
It's like you can hear two different voices. On one side, you've got the priestly voice. It's all about the official institution, the shrine at Shiloh, the high priest Eli, and authority that gets passed down from father to son. But then you hear this other voice, a prophetic one. This voice focuses on Hannah's direct, personal prayer, on Samuel's individual calling from God. It's about a new kind of authority, one based on spirit and charisma, not your family tree.
And the story definitely picks a side. I mean, think about it. Who's the institutional leader? It's Eli, the high priest. And what does he do? When he sees Hannah praying with all her heart, he thinks she's drunk. The head of the religious establishment is portrayed as being spiritually blind. The real, true connection with God is coming from this ordinary woman's silent, heartfelt prayer. The story is making a really bold statement here about where true authority comes from.
Okay, so we've got all these clues in the text pointing to a later agenda and a mashup of different sources. But what about the place itself? Is there any hard, physical evidence that grounds this story in the real world? For that, we've got to trade our literary hats for hard hats and look at the archaeology.
I mean, was this sanctuary at Shiloh, the whole center of the drama, even a real place? Was it somewhere an ancient family would actually have gone on a pilgrimage to pray, just like the story says?
And archaeology gives us a pretty resounding yes. Excavations at the site, Tel Shiloh, have confirmed that during the Iron Age, which is exactly when the story is set, this place was a major religious center. They found things like storage rooms for offerings, even what looks like the remains of a stone altar. So this tells us that even though the story was shaped for later political reasons, its setting is absolutely rooted in a historical reality.
Okay, so let's put all of these pieces together now. We've got the literary clues, we've got the historical context, we've got the archaeological proof. How does it all combine to give us the story of Hannah that we know today?
Well, it probably went down something like this. You start with these very old, very popular oral stories about a barren woman who has a miracle child. That's a pretty common theme in the ancient world. Then, hundreds of years later, you have these historians, these editors with a very specific theological goal. They take that raw material and they shape it. They masterfully weave together the sources that represent the old priestly way and the new prophetic movement. And what's the end goal? To create this incredible opening chapter for their national history, one that uses a personal miracle to set the stage for and legitimize the entire age of kings.
And that right there is the big takeaway. The story of Hannah is this brilliant piece of literary and theological engineering. It takes one of the most personal human struggles, the desire to have a child, and it masterfully turns it into the very foundation of an entire nation's political future. Her private faith is used for a very public purpose.
So realizing how a story this beloved was built with such a clear agenda, it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? It doesn't make the story any less powerful or meaningful, but it sure makes it more complex. It pushes us to read other ancient texts with new eyes, not just as simple history, but as carefully crafted documents with their own agendas. If this personal miracle was also political, well, how many other stories that we think we know so well are hiding a purpose just beneath the surface?